Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, aloha, sasrikal, hola, ciao, and bonjour. It's so awesome to be back. And today we have Dani Ferrara back with us again. And I'm extra excited about that because I know we're going to be talking about something really amazing, just like we did last time. Dani, will you jump in and just give us a quick reminder about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the more specific discussion that we have for today.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for that opportunity. It's amazing to be here. I'm super glad. Thank you. Thank you so much, Samia. So my name is Dani Ferrara. I am a life coach and I am a life purpose and transformational specialist. And I work with men who are already successful but they are looking for uh, more happiness and more enthusiasm, and in summary, to build and to have a more amazing and to flourish every single day more, because sometimes success can be a little bit tricky and it's really hard to to find that happiness that we are hoping and we are expecting when you are just rushing, And basically that my role is basically help empower those super amazing men to be more present to themselves, to their family, and ultimately have that fulfillment that they have been dreaming of.
That's awesome. I just love that. And that is exactly why we're going to be talking about what we're going to talk about today, because in order to be happy, in order to have that fulfilled life, there are some things that you need to have in place. And one of those things is this idea of mental fitness. You need to have mental fitness. And I know, Dani, you are one of the people who understands this idea really well and are able to use it to help your clients really well. So please, will you tell me more about mental fitness? What is mental fitness?
I love that idea. First of all, I'd like to tell you that the idea of mental fitness, it was not made up by Dani. That work was based on a bestseller called Positive Intelligence, and the author is Shirazad Shaman, yes. And it consists of um, working out our brain power and working out our positive feelings. Let me uh, make a metaphor. When we are working out, it's necessary to have that extra, um, let me put it that way, energy
Yeah.
to just go towards that moment and have that achievement. Yes, I was able to finish that up. I was able to just finish that running or jogging and etc. And when it comes to life, if we have that uh, mental muscles
Mm.
super straightened, we are able to go through stressful moments in a balanced way without stressing ourselves that much, because when we come across challenging times, instead of just react in a judging way, in a super dramatic sometimes way, we are able to search that sage part that is
Yeah.
sometimes hidden inside ourselves and handle those situations in a balanced, in a calm way. That's the idea, to
Yes,
work out our brain in that sense.
yes, I love it. I just absolutely love it. Can you tell me a little bit about, because like with physical fitness, we all have a much better awareness of the different aspects of physical fitness and what it involves, how to measure it, and so forth. And so if I wanted to improve my physical fitness, I'd have a better idea of how to go about doing it. But what about mental fitness? How can you measure mental fitness, for example?
Yes, you measure when we are able to have that positive behavior or that positive feeling with so much more frequency if you compare to the negative. And based on those comparative behaviors, we have a PQ that we call PQ. And how much worked out, or how straightened our your muscles are. Let
Mm,
me give you another example, because when you talk about concrete situations, it's so much more concrete, or so
yeah,
much
easier.
easier to understand, to
Yes,
grasp the idea. Because as we were talking, we are still conditioned naturally
mhm,
to behave in a sense of being in a survival mood or in a survival attitude. It's something that is automatic. What
mm,
does that mean? Neuroscience shows that to us, shows that to us, just that our automatic behaves when someone talks something that we don't like, and our automatic behavior, it's about first judging ourselves, just there is something wrong with myself, and after that we judge the other people, the
yeah,
other person. And that's the survival mood, because we feel like we are being threatened.
mm,
And our brain is conditioned to behave that way. But if we are if you get used, or if we work out our mental muscles, I love those metaphors. If you work out those uh, your brain muscles, you learn how to change, how to shift that behavior. When someone when you come across the same situation, instead of judging yourself
yeah,
and judging the other person, you are going to automatically think uh, uh, about being empathetic, for example. Just that person maybe is having a bad day,
mm,
or maybe that person have or had a difficult past. Instead of judging ourselves or thinking about having something wrong, we
mm,
learn how to have more empathy. That's an
yes,
example.
yes,
And there are many in our everyday life when we are working, and we feel like there is a co-worker who is not that just so fast as we expect to. It's something that we get stressed. And at the end of the day, we have our, in our essence, something that's not so pleasant to
yeah,
our coworker or something like that. It's about getting used to get out or step out that survival mood that is, it's a pattern. It's something that we haven't already learned, that we are here to thrive. We don't need to survive anymore, you know, because those uh, behaviors that I have just told you about being in a survival mood, they
Yes.
come from the fact that we have to defend ourselves.
Mm.
They come to the origin is about our survival instinct, because when we were in the jungle, we have to really be stressed and hyperachiever if we saw something that it's not that close, but something that just has a danger.
Yeah.
Yes, they are the woods, or just can be a threat or something like that.
Yes.
We have to run, because if we don't do that, we are gonna die. We're being attacked. So we used to be very hyper, just achiever, awaken in an excessive way,
Mm.
because we used to get stressed in a regular basis, because that was necessary. But that's not the case anymore. That's the point.
Right. And even in cases where, people are in today's world living in challenging circumstances, the fact of the matter is that the nature of those challenges is very different than 10,000 years ago and you were living in a jungle or something like that. The nature of the challenges is very different. And so they need to be dealt with differently. Like you can run away from a threat like a wild animal that's about to uh, attack you. And that's a great response to save yourself from that actual wild animal if you're faced with it. But when you have a threat that's not so physical, if it's the threat of, you know, um, like somebody mentally and emotionally bullying you, for example, um, running away physically from them might help you to avoid the situation in the short term, but it probably won't solve your problem in the long term. And so then you have to think about, okay, in this situation, in this circumstance, what can I do to not just survive, but thrive, like you were saying? Because to run away from that bully, um, you know, it's a quick fix that will allow you to survive in the moment, which is important in its way. But as a long-term strategy, it's not very effective. So I love the point that you just made about, yeah, we can stop thinking so much about surviving and think more about thriving. I love it.
Yes, yes. And a super important aspect about the whole mental fitness concept, Samia, it's about exercising the positive emotions,
Yes.
not only avoiding the negative ones,
Mm,
because science has already proven that our, um, how can I put that? When we have uh, to go through a competition, when we have to deliver a speech,
yeah.
if we have peace of mind, if we are emotionally balanced, we will do well. And that's the way the positive emotions, they have that effect on us.
Yes.
Uh, because people sometimes say, and my clients, they tell me that they'll tell me all the time, yes, but negative emotions go and lead me towards success, and it's amazing to give me that extra boost.
Yeah.
And my answer is maybe, maybe so. But what's the way that you're gonna get there? If you get, let me put that way, if you get there,
Yeah.
you are getting there in a pretty bad situation and stressful situation. It's super detrimental to do that to yourself, because you have the illusion that you are being pushed towards success. And yes, you are being pushed, but being pushed is not something pleasant, you know? It's
Yes.
so much better if you go towards success just by yourself, with just your willingness and towards your purpose. It's not necessary to be pushed, you know, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Although the negative emotions have the potential to lead you towards success, only the positive emotions, they have that power to give ourselves that true happiness, you
Yes.
know?
I agree with you. And I one way that I think about this is also that when you use a negative emotion like anger, let's say, to push you to strive for justice, let's say, like you see something wrong or someone has done something wrong to you, like you have suffered some kind of injustice yourself. I mean, it's very natural for us in that situation to experience anger. And for a lot of people, that anger becomes their fuel for seeking justice, for wanting to create change. Um, and it certainly is a kind of fuel, and it can certainly motivate you to do something, to create change, to seek justice. But any success that you achieve when you are being driven by your anger, it's like a narrow perspective on what that on what success is. Because like you were saying, if you are being driven by anger, even the success that you achieve is incomplete because it's at the cost of your peace of mind. It's at the cost of your happiness. It may be at the cost of your relationships, because when you're carrying that anger, it's going to hurt your relationships, and not just with the people that you're angry with. Our anger has a way of spilling out into other parts of our life, into our other relationships. And so on the one hand, you might achieve success in a certain narrow context, but you are also creating so much harm to yourself and to other people. So I'm like, that's not the kind of success I want. I want a more holistic kind of success, a more complete success, where I'm able to make the change that I want, where I'm able to achieve the justice that I seek, and still have my inner peace and happiness and have better relationships, not damaged relationships.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. There are two aspects that I would like to add to what you have just told me.
Mm.
First, it's about the fact that challenging situations sometimes uh, they are inevitable, you know. We cannot avoid that or those in our lives, but everything boils down to the way you face them.
Mm.
If we lose our jobs,
Yes.
or if I lose my job, if I just get stressed and depressed, that's something that will not help me at all.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if I get balance and remain calm, I think, what can I do to get another job? What
Yeah.
can I do to go uh, towards another objective? Maybe it was positive have lost that job because now I have the opportunity to look for another one.
Yeah.
Those are examples to deal the negative or the challenge. That's the point, the challenge situation in another way. The pandemic is an amazing example because we know how much people learned from that tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know that many people lost uh, their loved ones, and that was not a positive scenario at all.
Yeah.
But we learned from that. We learned to be less selfish. In my case, that pandemic helped my family to get closer. We have an harmonic uh, home now. Me and my husband and I, we are closer. And those are examples of positive
Mm.
consequence that came from a tragedy, you know.
Yes.
That's something important. Although in challenging, in negative events, you are able to have lessons, to take lessons,
Mm.
and they are, you can transform them into gifts. That's the point,
Yes.
instead of just seeing them in such a negative aspect. And there is an amazing example of a company um, that is about to just close its doors, and the CEO gets super stressed and in panic. And when he is able to get in touch with our program, and when he's oriented by those ideas, he
Yes.
starts to open his eyes to another perspective. For example, in that scenario, what can I do to reduce the damage?
Mm.
If I get or make a clean, or when it comes to my team are gonna have just the best of the best, and the C performance once they are gonna leave, and now we are gonna have just the 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 best ones in my company. That's an example. And the other uh, person who unfortunately lost his job, he was able to see that he was close to be retired, and now he was able to handle that situation and maybe retire earlier and to have more, spend more time with his family. And it's important to see those events without panic. And it's so funny, Samia. I don't know if I have shared it with you already. And I heard once that the antonym of clarity
Uh-huh.
is drama. Drama.
Oh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Clarity, drama. Clarity, drama. Right. They're the two sides, opposite sides of each other. Yeah, that is so cool. I had not heard that before, but I'm going to remember it.
Yes. If you stopped to just make drama, we would have our clarity. just close to ourselves more
Yeah.
frequently.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You know what you've been talking about makes me think about this concept of the sage and the saboteur. And I believe this is part of the teaching um, with mental fitness. Can you tell me more about the sage and the saboteur?
Ah, yes, I love those names.
Mm,
I'm not talking about every single saboteur or just the details regarding the sage. I know that we are almost running out of time, but let me summarize. The
mm,
saboteurs, uh, according that research we have, um, by just give or take 10 saboteurs. There are 10 saboteurs. For example, a victim
uh,
that is just that martyr. Ah, just poor me. Nobody likes me. Deeper inside is because we want to have attention. We want to call people's attention to ourselves. That's why sometimes we behave like that, you know?
mm,
And that's an example because we are sabotaging ourselves doing that because when we choose to behave or choose to have that mental frame,
mm.
we are in a completely helpless
Yeah,
situation. And that's not desirable.
indeed.
We compromise our professional life, we compromise our relationships. It's pretty hard to have um, a good, healthy relationship with that mental attitude.
Yes.
Just an example.
Yes.
And there is the perfectionist that we call the stickler, stickler because the
Yeah.
what I do is the perfect. Nobody does better than myself. I don't trust anyone to do that. At the end of the day, he does that because somehow he wants to prove to himself that he's the best and he's afraid of coming across uh, with someone who is better than him or her and takes his place. Those are behaviors of, as I told you, it's that survival mood that we are used to turn on, and
Yeah.
our brains
Mm,
are conditioned
yes.
to doing
Oh
that.
my gosh. This example of the perfectionist, I know I have a perfectionist side to me and I have to be really careful because on the one hand, I know when I let my perfectionist go wild, it feels really good because you're like, ooh, yes, I did this and I did it just so. And, there's a certain sense of control and power that you feel when you're doing everything by your definition of perfect. And there's a certain satisfaction that you get from being perfect. But on the other hand, then you are so focused on perfection and really underlying that. I know especially for me, this is very, very true, that underlying that need for perfection, there is a fear. There's a fear of making mistake. There is a fear of losing control. And it really holds me back from being able to do the best that I can actually do and from achieving what I can achieve because my fear of making mistakes, my fear of losing control prevents me from asking for help, right? And if I can't ask for help, then no matter how good I am at whatever it is I'm doing, I will always be limited. I will always be limited in how much of that good thing I can do and how much I can achieve just on my own, because I have limited time, I have limited energy, and all of that. So really, if I want to be able to keep growing and achieve even more success, then I have to be willing to ask for help. And therefore, I have to be willing to let go of my need for control and do something about, this fear and just let it go.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Mm,
Exactly like that.
yeah.
And besides what you told me in a brilliant way, we are able to see the solutions. There is another example from the corporate, and it's amazing. In a scenario, again, chaos, in a scenario of chaos, um, there is um, a worker who was talking to his boss about the challenging that they were faced because the results were not so good. And the worker was trying to show his boss the idea that what if, what if next week, next Monday, we start our meeting by spreading that idea. What can we do today
Mm,
so that in 3 years from now, we are gonna think that this challenge was the best thing that has already happened to ourselves.
yes.
And because when you throw that idea on air, we break that negativity. That's the most immediate
Yeah.
effect first. And the second, at the end of the day, word is exactly the way we see.
Yeah.
And when we start to see the solution instead of seeing only the problem, that changes completely the way we behave or the way people around ourselves behaves. And when that was spread that idea, his team got motivated to change that scenario to make their best, you
Uh,
know?
yes.
And it was so funny, the answer of the boss, I forgot to mention. The, he mocked by telling, come on, I'm not gonna live that life just if it happens, just in a philosophical way. Come on. The first reaction was
Mhm.
to just make that ironic or to have that ironic, answer and etc. And at the end, I'm really glad that he accepted because the king of the saboteurs is the judge because that was judged. How? Come on, you got. I think you just got crazy after being through that. You're not doing well. And we judge
Mm,
people, you judge ourselves all the time, and we forget to be more rational or more empathetical or more tolerant because we are always judging and being judgmental even when we are children is good to a certain extent because that saves ourselves from danger. For example, another children, or we develop those ideas when we have parents that are not that good. And instead of just thinking that the responsible by our lives are the villains is not the correct word, but people who have problems because we don't want to believe that our hands, we are in the hands of people who are not able to take care of myself. No, because my life would be in risk. So I prefer to think that the problem is myself.
Ah,
There is something wrong with me.
mm, yes. That, my gosh. Yeah, there's so many kids, like you see this very, very commonly that like when, for example, if your parents are fighting, and they have an unhealthy relationship in that way, the children will blame themselves. They think it's my fault my parents are fighting, even though, as a matter of fact, it is not the kid's fault. It has nothing to do with the kid. But it's so natural and easy for the child to think that it's their fault because of exactly what you were saying. They're not able to fully understand the situation, and they're not able to see a different, better way to understand the situation. And the best they can do in that moment is to think, oh, it's my fault. Yeah, that, oh, that breaks my heart. That breaks,
Yes,
breaks my heart.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if an
Yes.
adult does something to, blame or judge themselves or harm themselves, it's like one thing. They're an adult. But when 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 a child is suffering like that, I hate to see that.
Yes, it's terrible. It's terrible. And we take those ideas to ourselves, to our lives when we grow up.
Yes. Yes. So I think my last question probably, unless you give another brilliant answer, and then I have to ask you a follow-up question. um, but for right now, the last question that's coming to my mind is, can you talk a little bit more about what is the proper way for us to understand and relate to our negative emotions? Because we have them. We have these negative emotions. We have these negative thoughts. And, we talked about a lot of the different ways in which we shouldn't relate to them and transform them into something more helpful, better. Um, so what is the best way for us to understand and relate to our negative emotions?
Great question, Samia.
Mm,
First is to accept those emotions, to allow ourselves to feel them. That's the first. And the second, to ask ourselves the reason why we are feeling like that.
mm,
Because let me tell you something,
mm,
the pain that comes uh, from the result of those negative emotions, they are similar to an alarm clock.
uh-huh,
There is a metaphor that I love when you are cooking and just you put without intention
mhm,
your hands on the hot stove. What happens? You
yep,
remove automatically because the pain, the heat that you felt makes you.
yes,
But instead of just not listen the reason why that pain is inside ourselves,
mm,
instead of reflecting and removing our hands, if you just let our hands on the hot stove,
mm,
our hands would burn up to the bones. And that would be so much painful. And that is exactly what happens when we try to forget that we are not in pain or numb
yeah,
ourselves
yeah,
by eating or watching TV or drinking or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's important to understand that our pain wants to show that there is something that must be done so that we can return to a balanced
Right.
way. And to wrap up, I'd like to tell you a pretty short story about interpreting the events of life. I'm gonna be fast. There is a story called Stallion, the Stallion horse. That's the name of the horse who lives in a farm
Mhm.
with a guy and his teenager boy. Maybe you have already heard that story. Have you ever? It seems
I
like,
don't think so. Tell me more.
yeah. And that horse is a champion and they are super proud. And just out of the blue, he was stolen.
Oh no.
And the family, in general, the boy, mainly the boy, was super sad. And the dad says, who knows what is good, what is bad? Then everybody gets astonished. How
Mm,
come? Are you not mad or sad because
mm,
your horse was stolen? And was, I don't know, let's let's see. And a few days later, his horse
mm.
is returns, is able to just get himself free.
Uh,
And with him, he brings another or other
uh,
two horses.
uh-huh,
And
uh-huh,
instead
uh-huh.
of having just one, now they had
Yes.
three, and that was a blessing, and that's not the end. And when the boy was trying to train that one of those horses, he falls from the
Mm,
horse. He
mm,
gets hurt and he fractures his leg.
uh,
And again, oh, that's so bad. And the dad says, who knows what is good and what is bad?
mm,
And again, a few days later, there is a war
mm,
in that village, in that part of the city, and every single young man was called, but his child was not because his leg was broken.
yeah. Mm,
And and that time people just didn't comment anything else because the answer is, who knows what is good and who knows what is bad?
yes, that's right. That's right. Sometimes you, it's not until you're able to look back that you're able to see all the good that came out of the situation you thought was bad. So just if you are thinking, if you're feeling you're in a bad situation now, maybe this is an opportunity to practice patience and see this as a fun challenge to find the good in the situation or see what good you can create from the situation. And, that is an amazing aspect of mental fitness. That is something that you will be able to do for yourself more and better the more mentally fit you are. So yay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dani. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you did. I especially love all the examples and the stories that you give. They make it so much more easy to understand and remember what you're saying and the point that you're making. I just love it. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. As always, it was amazing to be here. And thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yay. Thank you, Dani. And for our listeners, we are going to add Dani's links to the show notes. We'll add my contact links to the show notes. So please get in touch with Dani. Get in touch with me if you need any support. We're here for you. Take good care. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes.